Welcome. On today's show, there's yet another way in which AI is changing the game of accessibility. Love to hear it. Christopher Sutton, the CEO of Wavefront Centre for Communications Accessibility, stops in today. It's going to connect us with Bettear. This is one of the best and great useful uses for AI for sure.
This is Kelly and Company.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate your time. If you're checking us out via YouTube, you can find content from the show there. You, of course, can listen to our podcast, subscribe to the Kelly and Company podcast, and listening in on AMI audio multiple times through a day, but we first premiere on there at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Absolutely fantastic to have you on board with us. Nazreen Abdul-Majid joining me on the show. Niz, happy Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday.
So, a question for you. Are you a sea turtles fan or an ocean fan? Is that where some of your favorite animals dwell?
Oh, yes. They're so beautiful. And it just reminds me of Finding Nemo.
Oh, so were you into all those kinds of, any of the sea cartoons? Yeah.
Obsessed. Yeah. I was obsessed.
Really?
With them. Yeah. Yeah. To this day, I still know, like, word for word the movies of Finding Nemo and all those Disney movies out there, so it was the best.
My parents loved all that stuff, particularly my dad would enjoy it. My mother liked, kind of more of the fantasy shows, the movies and series, like, or whatever, that had those kinds of out of the way, like, wow, that's some real thinking. But my dad loved those with the animals, the quirky creatures. He loved that kind of stuff, and the Land Before Times and all those kinds of things. Those were all his kind of thing.
That's all a big part of my childhood. That's what. Yeah, well, amazing. Yeah.
My parents would have sat there with you watching all that stuff. That's absolutely for sure. One of the things that I get a lot of items that have robot content in them, and I'm going to start here with one of these, and I'll let you bring up. We've got something for us too of course, viral interest online. But some people get really creeped out of how similar at times our smart speaker voices are, or why are they designing robots that are more humanoid? And of course, the answer to that is, why wouldn't you design something that, if we wanted to do the things we want it to do, in other words, take tasks off us, it needs to have the digits and things like that we have to make that even remotely possible, whether it's carrying something or turning a doorknob or whatever it might be. There's a robotic sea turtle that could be swimming in an ocean near you. If you're setting out to build a underwater robot that's speedy, maneuverable, and versatile, why not just copy what already works in the actual natural world? And that's what China's Bettear has done with its bio-inspired amphibious robot turtle. Now, the oceans, we got to keep in mind, constitute most of the world, and we do very little to keep them clean, to take care of them, to service them. Really, we just hardly do anything. So the company has just unveiled its next innovation in the world of conservation and ecological sustainability with this. It's called Amphibious Robot Turtle, and it's a gadget that simply just goes out, tracks wildlife, investigates, and help isolate and clean up harmful material out there. They want, and that's what they feel, this company, their goal is to help clean up the oceans. And we've heard how much plastic, how much of this, how much of that is everywhere, and we're finding that out. I love the concept, and I know, obviously, Niz, it's really an investigator. It's going to go and check around. And if they can reel off a bunch of these, send it to different places and the depths, and I don't know how deep this thing can go. We're going to find all that stuff out. But funny enough, it makes sense. So Fedora's off to them, I got to say.
I think it's incredible that we've gotten to this point, because as you said, we don't do enough for our environment. People just straight up don't care. So this is an incredible device. It's an incredible concept to do that. So it's amazing. We've come to that point.
Okay. What do you have for me?
Well, as for the internet, I'm over it. at this point with all these ridiculous viral videos that are going up. So this guy tried to pull off a prank involving super glue, and let's just say things didn't go as planned.
No, it can't go right with super glue, and that's when it's a prank.
And
way.
People just don't think. I don't know, like if. Let me get to the story. Anyway, so in a now viral video, a man attempts to glue his lips together as part of a silly joke for a video. But instead of the prank going smoothly, he ends up sealing his lips shut. And we mean like really shut. Panic sets in as he realizes he just can't open his mouth, and he's left frantically just trying to get help. The internet, of course, had a field day with it. People were quick to react, sharing their own versions of glue-related disasters.
Yikes.
And offering hilarious commentary on the whole fiasco. The fact that people were commenting and sharing their own glue related disasters. I mean, how many people are doing this? But anyway,
I think it starts because a lot of people do it by mistake. You know, when you're a kid and you're trying to glue something and all of a sudden the whole paper and you're and you panic. I mean, I think people do it a lot more by mistake than they'll ever own up to. And what a way now to go viral.
Well, you know, thankfully this guy was safely freed. Okay, he got over it. But lesson learned, maybe just don't use super glue.
Right.
Or just use eyelash glue. Or no glue at all would be fantastic, but you know, people just can't help themselves. I've seen so many of those glue related disasters, by the way. I've seen people who were trying to make their pull a prank on their like husbands and act like they did a lip injection or whatever it is to plump their lips. So they put super glue at the top of their lip line and then fold their lips so it looks bigger. And then they realize it's just stuck there. So you look ridiculous. So that was a fail. There's so many of these videos.
I hope people don't do that with eyelids. Like try to hold them up to freak people out.
What? It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to do that. It would not surprise
without
me.
any thought about it. Like we used to be told as kids when we do that stuff to scare people. Hey, look! Oh, stop that! My parents used to say, it's gonna freeze up there. If you keep it like that too long, your eye won't the lid won't ever close. Oh, it won't? Yeah, you keep it too long. So of course we just didn't keep it too long, right? You scared someone. Make sure it goes down. Cool. Thanks, Nils, because it is something to think about, and it's kind of funny when you say glue, a dangerous weapon. Careful with it. Mm-hmm. Nisreen Abdul-Majid. Also, Nisreen, of course, handles so much of our social media out there. When you see things come out, videos or interactions out there, our polls, Nisreen's handling them. Remember, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. Thanks, Nis.
Thank you.
For over 67 years, Wavefront Centre has proudly served deafblind, and hard of hearing British Columbians and their families. CEO Christopher Sutton is here, and he's going to be sharing with us the important work that the organization does and an innovative use of AI in a product called Bettear. Chris, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us here on Kelly & Company.
Thank you for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be here. And just to give a little visual description of myself, I'm a middle-aged guy in his mid-40s, dark hair, a closely shaved beard, and I'm wearing navy blue this morning. So really a pleasure to have you on. It's really interesting to jump in on this conversation on glue. So I don't know where we're going to go with this conversation. We're going from glue to AI. So I'm happy to be here.
I'll tell you what, since we've got you here, we'll stick with you for about 10 minutes or so.
That sounds awesome.
What is the current mandate of the center, and how has it changed? Like 67 years, long time.
Well, that's a really awesome question. And the organizations that we're actually going to be celebrating 70 years of service next year. And our organization came together with the deaf and hard of hearing community, saying that we needed to provide more services, especially when it came to veterans returning from the war and just being a place where people could interact and socialize. Over the years, we've grown. In the last 5 years, we've made tremendous steps and done some incredible things. We've actually designed and opened the most accessible building in North America. We changed our name from the Western Institute for the Deaf or Hard of Hearing to Wavefront Centre for Communication Accessibility, really showing that our commitment to our communities and making sure our communities are accessible and communication barrier-free when it comes to communication. And we've really expanded our programs and services to better meet the needs of our communities. We used to primarily be audiology programs where people could get their hearing tested by a hearing aid. Sign language services provided community outreach programs such as helping seniors at home. But in the last 5 years, we've actually expanded our accessible communication to include captioning services, audio description, captioning and translation. We now have a digital literacy program for deaf-blind individuals who have intervening services. So our programs and services have really expanded to meet the needs of our community as our community's needs evolve with the times as well.
Incredible. That is amazing. I'm curious, just on a side note, institution is a word that I know the CNIB had a lot of struggle when they changed and said, well, we're just called the CNIB. Well, why? And a lot of it was removing that word and what is perceived as a negative connotation. Did that have to do with the name change or the realities of how things have changed?
Well, I have to be very frank. The name change was a very controversial. It was very central, and it was something that really the community embraced and accepted. And as we looked at changing our name, it was just because our services and our community and communication needs were changing. We wanted to be reflective of that. Bill C-81 passed and communication was a priority. And I was really proud to see that the organization was being innovative and really grasping onto what the future meant and said, hey, we're about communication. And trying to take that and move it along. The previous name still holds very near and dear to many people, but we're about breaking down communication barriers.
I think that's wonderful. And it, again, as they like to say in the song, it's a sign of the times. That's really what it's all about. Talk a bit about that honor, having that accessible building built. Can you tell us about some of the accessibility there and a little bit about the honor?
Yeah, so it's really incredible. Like as an individual, I live with profound hearing loss, and I'm fluent in sign language, and I just talk about a lot of organizations look at accessibility and they say, "Ooh, it's not aesthetically pleasing. It's going to look like it's for disabled people. It's just not feeling like our design." I challenge anyone that comes into our facility here in Vancouver to say that to us. We have a very visual pleasing building where so many of either the furniture or the space itself is completely aesthetically pleasing. It probably looks better than a lot of facilities you go into. And really it's built and with our communities in mind, our employees in mind, and really the how we embrace innovation and creativity. So we were rated underneath the Rick Hansen Foundation certification program, and work closely with them and other organizations to ensure that we met the criteria and brought in a lot of our own design aspects that were required for people that were deaf, blind, hard of hearing. I'll give you some examples. So someone in a mobility device, you can walk next to them because the corridors are a little extra wide. The corridors are also rounded. So when you go around the corridor, it's much easier to navigate that. Also, if someone's using sign language, you can see them in advance because the corridor is round. There's a lot of there's a lot of glass and open spaces. Some of the sign criteria in the area in Mount Pleasant, where our headquarters is located, required a big open atrium. And for most people that use hearing aids and cochlear implants, those environments are something we definitely avoid. There's a lot of echoing and background noise, but the use of acoustic baffles, the furniture that we have really absorbs that sound so that you're not getting that echoing noise. And then we've just really integrated technology into our facility. So anyone of can access it. And it's a testimony to our commitment to communication, accessibility, and to innovation and creativity.
What I find so amazing, Chris, is when I hear you talk about the shapes, the glass, where I might work in a place where I want to be able to hear properly, the baffles, I can understand that. So again, the total echoing, I can relate to that, even as a blind person with what some people would say more acute hearing or whatever people believe about that. But when I hear you talk about space, but glass and rounded corners, I think about how I like to be able to hear what's going on around me, even if it's none of my darn business. And what a way for that communication to happen using your eyes for people who are using sign language, anything like that. So really, it just dawned on me as you're talking about saying, well, of course, that makes total sense. I'd like to just step back before we get into talking about Bettear. You mentioned service people. People who have served, people who have had hearing loss in some capacity or damage. Can we just talk a little bit about that? Because I know I've heard a lot about after World War II, how many people were war blinded. I heard about how the sport of goalball came to be as a blind sport after World War II. But I think sometimes we don't really recognize how much hearing loss happens, whether you're serving, whether you're a part of the military, or anything like that you can add that I'm grasping at straws thinking about.
Yeah, and just another important thing I want to mention when we talk about acoustics of an environment, most of the time, like if you're in an office building, the HVAC systems are about 75 to 80 decibels. For an individual, when you're being exposed to noise of that level, even though it's very quiet, most people would never, at Wavefront it's about 35 to 40 decibels. So when you leave the facility at the end of the day, when you're working there, that fatigue, trying to listen doesn't exist.
Man.
But when we talk about service or just individuals, like I like to look at the community in different ways. I know people saying hearing loss is offensive to some, the culturally deaf community and people that use the sign language. I've never lost anything. I really like to say that people that are deaf, we're a linguistic minority. We're like the French community. We have our norms. We have a language. We have a culture, and that's something we've never lost. That's something that we adopted and something that we're exposed to within our community. When it comes to people, and we see a huge number, the numbers of hearing loss is increasing drastically, and that's because the world is not getting quieter. We are constantly listening to music. We're constantly in loud environments, and when you're being exposed to noise after 15 minutes consistently, you're putting yourself at risk for permanent hearing damage. So there is a lot of instances where we're seeing younger people with hearing loss. It's just not impacting the older community. It's when we see service people returning from war and that, they're in loud environments and they're exposing themselves to constant damaging noise levels. So using hearing protection, using headsets that are filtering noise is so critical in the workspace and so many other places where you're in a loud environment.
Thank you for that, Chris. Appreciate it. All of that. Let's talk a little bit about the partnership with Bettear, and can you do some explanation here about the partnership and what is it?
So AI is a really, really hot word out there right now, and when we talk about AI and technology, it is different than the traditional sense of someone going on, I won't name any apps, but going on an app and saying, hey, help me write this email or look at my resume and help me develop this. AI and hearing technology really is really advancing. When the last few years, if you received a hearing aid within the last 2 or 3 years, the hearing aids and the ability to improve sound quality, to reduce noise, and to adapt to different environments has drastically changed because of AI. There's been AI has really allowed people with hearing aids and cochlear implants to just be more adapted to their space, to take a background noise, to really allow you to focus on the speech that's in front of you, and it's getting smarter. when I wear a cochlear implant and a hearing aid, and when I go into a noisy environment like a restaurant, my technology is automatically adapting to that environment. 2 or 3 years ago, I would have to go into the program settings on my phone and really have to change those settings to filter it to the environment and really not be comfortable. But AI has really allowed the technology to really improve one's listening experience and the quality of life and quality of the sound that for many people was not something they enjoyed before. When you think of a hearing aid, it only amplifies sound. It doesn't make you hear like you used to hear. And I'm quoting, unquoting, it doesn't make you hearing by any means. And a cochlear implant processes sound at a much different level. Um, so Bettear is a really revolutionary technology. It's really, I was at a conference a couple of years ago in Europe and at the International Federation of Hard of Hearing, and there were many different vendors that are talking about the future of technology. And Bettear was one of the vendors at this venue. And as an individual, I was going around and meeting the different vendors, learning about technology, learning about what the future of hearing healthcare looked like. And this particular company just really struck a chord to me. As an individual, I've used adaptive and assistive technologies my whole life. I've used infrared systems, FM systems, loop systems. These systems often require you to have another device, a receiver, often requires you to be wearing a loop, a third-party technology, headsets, and they're not always perfect. And this particular technology allowed me to use my own mobile phone. I downloaded an app. I was able to select the space I was in, and it transmitted the sound directly to my own technology.
Wow.
And for me, that was incredible.
Yeah.
I'll give you like just an everyday example because for some people that might be hard to grasp. But imagine going to the movie theater, and for a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people, the movie theater isn't an enjoyable experience. In the last few years, we've seen devices that allow you to put a little box on the cup holder so you can view captioning if there's captioning available. Other devices like FM systems or infrared systems, you go to the front desk and you ask a person, can I have a listening device? Often they have no idea what you're talking about. Then they might get out this device, dust it off, give it to you. You get in a movie theater,
and
you
it
turn
doesn't
it on,
work.
the system isn't working, the battery's
yes.
dead. It's just horrible. But with Bettear, you actually are using your own device. You're going, if the system is available in the theater, you simply go in, you turn on the app, you click what movie theater you're in, maybe it's the name, title of that movie or the auditorium, and then it's streaming directly to yourself. You can control the sound. You're in total control of the experience. Yeah.
Chris, this is beautiful. How can people reach out to you guys or get more information on Bettear?
Well, easily way to reach out to us, just visit our website, www.wavefrontcentre.ca. Also, you can contact us. You can by phone or email. And right now, we're really working on creating more accessible barrier-free communities. So this year, we're looking at installing more systems like Bettear across the country. We're also looking at making sign language more accessible for our users that use sign language and going into everyday places of enjoyment and public facilities where we're going to be installing video remote interpreting and some other great services to allow barrier-free communication.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you joining us from Wavefront Centre. Christopher Sutton, wonderful talking to you, man, and good luck with this year as we begin a new year and so much on the horizon. Folks, please check them out and get to know and ask any questions you might have. Christopher Sutton joining us from BC on the program. On Parasport Nation, the brand new AMI sports show, Alex Smythe spotlights upcoming parasport events in Canada and abroad, pulls back the curtain on how parasports are played, meets athletes, coaches, and trainers. Alex, your show joins us right after on Tuesdays and Fridays, part of Kelly and Company, beginning in the second half. Just in a little while, you're going to be put to work. What's on the show first? Let's handle our Tuesday.
Yeah, so today's episode, we get a chance to chat, with Kai Schremeyer. He is the head coach of Team Canada's wheelchair tennis team. So he kind of breaks down the sport, the landscape for Canada and abroad. It's a really fascinating conversation.
Wow.
And it's really from a former athlete himself, a world number one, to now being in coaching in that transition as well. So you get a bit of everything in the conversation. It's definitely worth checking out.
Man, it's great. Do you find with a lot of the interviews, time flies by, or do you find, especially as you guys roll this out and kind of figuring how much time you need, that there's never enough time to do it? Or is it ever long?
Yeah. Oh, no, there's never enough time. The first few episodes, we tried doing 2 interviews in an episode, and we're like, no, there's not enough time. No. We do one episode, 1 interview per episode. And even at that point, I mean, there's a struggle sometimes because there's people you just want to talk to for like an hour and a half because they have so much information to share. But unfortunately, with a half an hour show, you just need to bring them back on in the future episodes.
You bet. Friday, who's up?
Friday, we're still kind of figuring things out. This is the exciting thing of doing live sports television. You know, you try to lock down interviews. A lot of athletes are traveling and all over the place. So we're still figuring out who's going to be on Friday's episode. But we have an exciting few weeks planned out ahead. From Andrea Nelson, who's a canoeist and alpine skier. We're going to get her on at some point. We're going to look ahead to Climbing Escalade's first national championship, so we're going to have them on at some point. It's just trying to figure out when they're available to come on the show. So it may be Friday, maybe next week. We'll have to wait and see.
All right. We'll find out from you next week what next week holds. Alex, as usual, thanks a lot. Folks, stick around. He's up next on AMI Audio. You can find them as a YouTube product. You can find them also as a podcast, Parasport Nation, right here hosted by Alex Smythe. Folks, you can email us at kellyco@ami.ca and call us 1-866-509-4545. We'd love to hear from you. On our next program, if you're a little worried about getting sick this flu season, guess what? We got help for you. We meet the latest contributor to the Kelly and Company family. Registered nurse Travis Nightingale will join us tomorrow on the show, who will help us get ready for flu season and tell us when exactly we might need to turn for medical assistance. Talk to you then. Fedora's off to you, folks.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.